Triple H is upset that WWE didn't get Will Ospreay. Plus, a huge title match is revealed for Survivor Series, and the AEW creative structure has been revealed. It's all in the Cultaholic wrestling news right now. Gentlemen, Triple H said that Will Ospreay wasn't able to cope with the grind.
Doesn't like the grind.
Didn't say him per se, but we knew.
Ospreay responded to it on a Dynamite, I believe, as well, or certainly on AEW TV.
He certainly did.
A bit of a shooty promo as well.
It turns out that if these comments from Trips were indeed aimed at Will, it was only because he was sad about not bringing him into the WWE.
Yes, this is the first of several revelations from a very newsworthy episode of the Wrestle Purists Raw Review, where they talked about various things behind the scenes in both WWE and, as we'll get onto in a bit, AEW. But yeah, we're going to talk about WWE at first. The quote from the episode is that Triple H thinks Will Ospreay is a tremendous wrestler and he's salty that he didn't get him. Those grind comments that you mentioned was apparently just Triple H venting.
Yeah, he says he wanted Will. He knows how great Will is, and he didn't get him, and he was really upset about it. They go on to say they spoke to people within WWE at the time who were like, well, then why didn't they pay him more? We're told that it was Hunter's call how much money was going to be offered, and the hands were tied when it came to that. And Will obviously went where there was more money, which kind of makes sense.
It sounds like Triple H did want him. And then, from that quote there from the Wrestle Purist Raw Review, wasn't in charge of how much they were offering Ospreay. And if it was up to Triple H by the sounds of it and by his potential reaction there, he would have offered him more just to get him.
Now, where do you think Will would have sat in WWE by this point? Had he taken that offer early on?
That's a very interesting question. I do think they would have presented him as a big deal. I think he would have skipped NXT. But as for where he would be on the main roster, at the moment, with these long title reigns and long storylines at the top of the roster, it's such a crowded, it crowds out a lot of people, doesn't it? I think he would be IC champion.
Nice, good shout. I would have probably put him in the Intercontinental or maybe in the United States title thing. Maybe he could have been an impetus for a heel turn for LA Knight. You know, the new thing in town, pushing the old new thing away. There's something potentially in there, if that would have been where he'd have gone. Moving over to a little later in the year for this year, Survivor Series. We know that, we don't know, obviously, but certainly the intimation is that we're going to be getting a Bloodline Civil War Games match at Survivor Series. But questions over what the world title's going to be doing seem to have been answered on this Wrestle Purist Raw Review as well.
Yes, they say that CM Punk is set to face Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, this is a very interesting title match because either man could win. I know who I think will win if it goes ahead.
And who do you think would win?
I think Gunther will win.
Ooh.
I don't think they would want Gunther to lose, especially with this big match against Cody Rhodes in Saudi Arabia before Survivor Series. And if he were to, I don't know if he will lose that one, but if he were to lose that one, I then can't imagine him losing against CM Punk. 2 big losses in a row. He could even beat Cody, who knows? But I just can't see them putting the belt on CM Punk where you've got Seth Rollins lurking in the background wanting to get revenge on CM Punk or to re-spark their feud. And I think maybe we'll see Rollins costing Punk against Gunther or something like that.
It feels like we might get that Punk-Rollins match at Mania 41.
Yeah.
And with the world title in the mix, it makes it very tantalizing. But it's also a match where you don't need the world title involved.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. It's built on hatred. And that's,
as all the best things are.
Yeah, and
Pure
that's often
hatred.
very compelling, as we saw over in AEW with Hangman and Swerve. There were no titles involved at the end of that feud, and it was very scary indeed. I think that you're right. I think we'll get Punk versus Rollins at WrestleMania, and I don't think that Punk will beat Gunther, but who knows? I also think it'll be a really good match because Punk often does his best stuff against we've seen him have matches with Brock Lesnar in the past or a bigger opponent like John Cena who can throw him around, and Punk has to use his brain and try and use tactics to try and win. And I think that Gunther's the perfect opponent for that sort of matchup.
Really, really is. Now, when it comes to AEW and assembling some of those perfect matchups, those perfect storylines, we've had a little insight via Wrestle Purist once again in terms of who are putting together some of these key matches and key moments within AEW.
This is very interesting as well, because as we'll go on, we're going to talk about several big storylines going on in AEW at the moment, and as Tom says, who's been writing and producing them. Some of them, it doesn't list a writer, it doesn't specify that there's been a writer and producer, which makes me think that there's one person in particular who has wrestling experience who I imagine is a safe pair of hands when it comes to being the road agent for the matches of the feud as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That person is RJ City, who seems to be in charge of two major storylines at the moment. The Blackpool Combat Club, or whatever we're calling Moxley's stable now, their storyline, which was very surprising. I thought, oh wow, RJ City. I didn't realize he had such influence backstage.
An RJ City production.
And then one that I didn't find too surprising, he's also behind Mariah May's current storyline, which is so RJ City coded that I wasn't surprised by that one. But fair play to him for, first of all, not being scared of the graft and for doing double duty on the storyline.
He's not afraid of the grind like Will Ospreay.
The grind, not the graft, sorry, the grind. And also, the Blackpool Combat Club, or whatever we're calling it now, their storyline. Wow, I didn't realize he could be so dark and evil.
We're seeing Will Washington get his hands in as well. Big love for Will, who, according to this report from Wrestle Purist, has been working on the Swerve and Hurt Syndicate stuff, as well as the Hangman Page and Jay White story. I can see Will going up and up and up in that company, you know.
Yeah, he seems to be doing really good stuff. I really enjoyed this segment with, I guess, it says here, the Hurt Syndicate. I guess that's what we're going to be calling MVP's stable.
Well, that seems to what it's been intimated to be called.
Yes.
The Hurt Syndicate.
I understand the reports when they said they wanted to hold off on the Bobby Lashley thing because you don't want two hometown favourites to get horribly beaten up in the same show, and that makes a lot of sense. But I think that even though it didn't really come to blows yet, the stuff with Swerve and Shelton and MVP was really excellently done. So yeah, Will Washington, congratulations there. Hangman and Jay White, that's very interesting as well. And they put, I'd be interested to know who was the road agent for that match because it was very cerebral. Oh, was it Triple H?
It was Triple H the whole time. Always like to see who's behind these matches and who's kind of helping put these pieces of the jigsaw in there. We'll end on a little bit of stuff from WWE, I do believe, because there is one particular faction that is NXT flavoured. The people within the main roster are getting a good, firm look at the moment, and that is, of course, the Metaphor.
Yeah, we saw Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson, one half, I guess, together of the Metaphor. Yes, 2 of the 4 of the Metaphor. They recently were in...
Two, if you will.
They were in the tag title picture recently. We're on SmackDown and everything. According to Wrestle Purists, this might not be the end we see of the Metaphor on the main roster. They say they are giving them the opportunity to just evaluate them. This is giving WWE the opportunity to evaluate the Metaphor. People in WWE like the charisma that those two have, specifically Lash Legend. Noam Dar is close to being cleared, and WWE thinks that the Metaphor have main roster upside, and they're giving them a bit of a trial run. That's the Meta Girls in this case, because the thinking in the company is, of course, Noam Dar is a main roster level wrestler. Can the ladies hang on the main roster and look professional? And if they can, we'll just keep them up there. Otherwise, that's fine. We've got a cool evaluation of them. They'll take some more time and reinstate the Metaphor in NXT for a little bit, and then we'll circle back to this around draft season, if not later next year. That's the kind of situation with that.
Really happy to see the Metaphor getting some flowers and possibly some main roster love full time, because I think that whole package is wonderful.
They're very funny.
Yes, they are.
Although we are seeing a more serious side to Aura Mensa recently in Noam Dar's absence. But when Noam comes back, he'll be a silly boy with him once again. I'm very biased because I know a lot of people, it's great to see like less experienced names like Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson get a chance, and Aura Mensa getting involved as well. Noam Dar is such a stalwart of the UK independent scene over the past, or was over the past decade before he moved to WWE. Just seeing him have a regular run on the main roster would be fantastic.
It would be really flipping good to flipping well see. Royal Quest 4 this weekend from New Japan Pro Wrestling. I had a lovely chat with Chris Charlton, the English commentator for New Japan Pro Wrestling. A brand new Desert Island Graps waits for you on the podcast feed. You can listen to it ad-free and watch the video version at patreon.com/Cultaholic as well. And you are indeed twitching tonight, lest people forget.
Oh yes, myself and Owen are on Football Manager again at 6 p.m. UK time. Twitch.tv/Cultaholic. Up the Birmingham Swans.
Get right up them Swans. And for the latest wrestling news at any time, you can check out cultaholic.com. Stay safe. Up them Swans.
Birmingham Swans.